Here's our economic update for August 4th, 2026. So for our inflation numbers, we have our producer price index that's at 5.5% and dropping, and our producer price index core, this is minus food and energy, went up slightly. It's at 5.1%. July 14th, we have our consumer price index going down. It's now at 3.5%. Our consumer price index core minus food and energy is at 2.6% and dropping. And we recently got our data for our personal consumption expenditures dropping now to 3.7%. And our PCE core minus food and energy is now at 3.3% and dropping. So they're at least moving for the most part in the right direction. I do expect inflation overall to go up if the conflict in the Middle East continues, just because increases in energy prices and shipping through those areas. So the Fed has a few mandates. Usually they only talk about the first two. One is keep stable prices. They want to maintain a target of about 2%. With the recent change in the Fed chair, said, well, 2% really means, 2 point something is still 2%. So that opens the question of, is 2.9% acceptable? It gives a little bit more wiggle room. And the second mandate is to maintain maximum employment. So let's talk about job numbers. So jobs, these will come out later this week as well. Current data that we have, ADP, we added 98,000 jobs in June, mostly in finance, education, healthcare, trade, transportation, and utilities. From our Bureau of Labor and Statistics on July 2nd, we added 57,000 jobs in June, 129,000 in May, and 148,000 in April. And if you noticed, in May and April, these numbers have been revised down by about 74,000 jobs. But overall, they're still all positive. We are seeing a drop in the labor force participation rate. That's now at 61.5%. Our unemployment was climbing. It came down about 0.1, 0.2 over the last couple of months. We're now at 4.2% unemployment, but less people are actually in the workforce. So to be considered unemployed, to be part of this 7.1 million people, effectively you can't have a job and you have to have looked for a job in the last 4 weeks. So that's 7.1 million. If you haven't looked for a job in 4 weeks, but you're still unemployed, that counts as another 6.0 million people. So that would come out closer to, there's around 7.7% of the population that doesn't have a job, that wants a job. And if you add another 4.7 million people want full-time work, but they can only find part-time work due to economic conditions, you're looking at about 10.5% of people that are not able to find full-time work. 27.3% of those people have been unemployed for more than 27 weeks or 6 months at this point, and I'll bring that up later in the video. The last JOLTS report we got was June 30th. The next one's August 4th. We're at 7.6 million jobs. That went up, so that was good. 5.2 million hires, 5.1 million separations. These numbers kind of seem like they're in line most of the time, so people generally are not leaving unless they have another job to go to. There's about 2.4 million jobs that are left unfilled pretty much each month, somewhere between 2.5 million of that. So it comes out to about a third of these jobs are generally not being filled. Big news in the last week, the Fed had their Federal Open Market Committee meeting. Their interest rates held again at 3.5 to 3.75%. This is what I predicted. They need to maintain ample reserves. They're going to buy up, Treasury bonds and bills and things like that. Inflation is elevated, capital investment, productivity is strong. The unemployment rate is fairly steady at this point. Economic activity has expanded. However, there is still uncertainty with the conflict in the Middle East, and that's going to impact your energy prices, which then impact inflation. Do note they had a 9-3 split on the vote. 3 of them voted to increase by 0.25% this time. So we will get a 0.25% increase at some point if this continues with the elevated inflation. I just don't know which meeting that will be. Our gross domestic product, or GDP, first quarter 2026 is 2.1%. So that's good, it's positive. Second quarter is 1.5%, again positive, so that's good. And for third quarter 2026, this is estimated by GDP Now to be plus 5%. This was on July 30th where I got this from. This is going to change day to day, so I wouldn't put too much stock in that yet. If the conflict is continuing in the Middle East, this may drop further. For our leading economic indicators on July 20th, we saw a decline of 0.2% month over month. The 6-month is still negative, but it's fairly stable. It's not signaling any type of recession or anything like that. The reason why this is negative, basically it's consumer expectations and building permits are fairly negative. Our coincident economic indicator grew by 0.2% month over month. Consumer spending has been weakening. However, spending in business and AI is keeping things afloat at the moment. How's the consumer doing? All of us are consumers. Leave a comment below. Do you feel like you're doing better or worse than you were 6 months ago? On July 28th, our consumer confidence index declined by 1.4 points, slight decline in view of jobs as well as businesses. If you look at confidence based on age, younger generations are seeing things as more favorable, still on decline. Older generations are a bit more negative at the moment. Why is this happening? I would think that as inflation kicks up, if you're living off a fixed amount of money, basically your savings are getting eaten away and you're not earning more money. However, if you're younger and you start seeing your income rising with inflation and you have like a fixed rate mortgage or something like that, things get easier to pay down with inflated money that was borrowed at low interest rates in the prior years. Families' financial current situation has slightly improved, whereas expectations have slightly declined. July 31st, survey of consumers for Michigan University. Index of consumer sentiment up 11.5% month over month, down 10.5% year over year. Current economic conditions up 14.9% month over month, down 19.4% year over year. Index of consumer expectations up 9.3% month over month, down 4% year over year. July 30th, we had our PCE, which includes our personal income, went up by 54.9 billion. That's up 0.2%. Our disposable personal income was up 48.3 billion, which is up 0.2%. Savings rate has declined. It's now at 2.7%. This is way below what people should be putting aside for retirement savings just in general. Should be closer to about 15%. Just gives you an idea of how low the savings rate is in the US. We did have a large drop in fuel prices in June, so that shows up as a huge negative here, but these prices are now going up again because of the ongoing conflict in the Middle East. A couple of concerns that I have. There's the yen carry trade and reshoring of Japanese yen. So when there's low borrowing cost in Japanese yen, people will convert that over to US dollars, and then they invest that into US bonds, they invest that into the US stock exchange, things like that. Now, if that money gets pulled out of the US and starts getting pulled away from the bonds, they hold about $1 trillion of US debt. It's the most of any country in the world. So if they pull that $1 trillion or some significant portion of that back to Japan and investments in Japan rather than the United States, what happens is in order to get other people to buy the debt, effectively the yield has to go up, or the pseudo interest rate, whatever you want to call it. If that happens, that impacts 10-year to 30-year bonds, and then the mortgage rates that we pay on our houses are impacted by that. So your mortgage interest rate is generally, 1 or 2% higher than whatever the 10-year bond is, let's say. So if Japan pulls money out, that increases the interest rate on mortgages for basically adjustable rate mortgages or new originations of mortgages or refinancing, those types of things. So look out for that. When stocks go down in the US or there's a change in the exchange rate with the yen to the US dollar, or the Bank of Japan increases interest rates, a lot of times people will pull money back out of the US stock market and try to pay off their debt before it gets out of hand in yen effectively. So that's a little bit on the yen carry trade. Just be aware of that. There's the ongoing conflict with Iran and the US. So we'll see where that goes. But effectively, that's impacting fuel prices, energy prices, and then the other issue is, so the choke point in the Strait of Hormuz is preventing about 20% of the world's oil from going through there. There's also proxy groups around Yemen that can cut off that strategic waterway. So that could cause another issue and disturbance for just shipping in general, as well as energy supplies around the world. So that all impacts the price of fuel. It effectively increases the price of basically all goods because all goods have to be shipped somewhere. The US and other countries have been releasing large quantities of oil into the market to try to help stabilize prices. However, this is not a permanent solution. As we keep withdrawing our supplies, there's going to be a point where the salt caverns that we store, the strategic oil reserves, basically you can't use them because they collapse, or you have some other detrimental effect that you can't use them again. We currently have 307 million barrels, but you have to leave, 100 million or so barrels in there so that it doesn't just collapse in and on itself. We are now at the lowest level that we've had these reserves in over 40 years now. The other thing I'm getting a little concerned about is how much money is being spent in AI, and then the AI bubble that just burst in South Korea. One of the issues there is that about half of its stock market is made up by two companies, and when those two go down, the whole stock market in South Korea goes down. So that's the issue there. But we are seeing a larger and larger concentration in spending in AI and AI businesses. Kind of reminds me of the dot-com bubble that happened. So just be aware of that before you invest in AI. Look into the company, make sure they're actually making money somewhere. I don't like to invest in companies that actually are not making profit. So the US stock market, we have a very high price to earnings ratio. The Buffett and Shiller index are also starting to raise some red flags here. We do have a high concentration in tech, and just watch out for margin, debt, and leverage. The more leverage and debt and margin that people take, the higher the risk is that if stocks go down, they have a margin call and they're forced to sell at whatever price, and then that kind of escalates and drops prices further. So when it happens, it generally happens fast. Now, with all this information, what do I do with my money? Well, one, make sure I get out of debt. I don't have any credit card debt or car debt or any type of personal loans or anything like that. So stay away from that. They have higher interest rates. The only debt that I do have is a long-term 30-year fixed rate mortgage, but I'm paying that off in 10, 15 years. So after I made sure that I'm out of debt, effectively, I have a 6-month emergency fund. Everything's in FDIC. These are in CDs, high yield savings. I'm getting about 4%, something around there for the CDs right now. And why do I say 6 months? If you remember back over here, 27.3% of people that are unemployed have been unemployed for more than 6 months. So that's about where I want to be. So if something happens, it gives you time to get back on your feet. Any money that I need in the next 5 years, say I'm replacing a roof or a heater or air conditioner or a car, or I'm getting married, or I'm just about to retire, any of the money that I'm going to need to spend in the next 5 years or less, I'm going to also put that in high yield CDs, high yield savings. That way I'm not losing my principal. I may have a lower potential return, but I'm also taking a lot less risk. So any money I don't need for at least 5 years, what I use is dollar cost averaging, and I put the same percentage of what I get paid every pay period into 70-80% in the S&P 500, 10 to 20% to international funds, and about 0 to 10% into bonds. And do realize that bond value is inversely proportional to the interest rate. So if we think that the interest rate is going to go up, I tend not to buy bonds. And if I think the interest rate will go down, I tend to stock up on more bonds. I have a video on bonds on the channel if you want to watch that. I also hold about $200,000 in gold, silver, aluminum, copper, steel, other things. I also like making body armor out of multiple different types of metals. I also reinvest my money into various businesses that I started. So my farms, YouTube, things like that. If I have any ideas that have asymmetric risk where there's a very large benefit with very minimal risk, I'll take that risk day after day. and turn that into a business at some point. Well, thank you for watching. Please subscribe. If you want to learn more about how to make more money, how to save, how to invest, how to be an entrepreneur while limiting your risk, this is a channel for you. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.